We are live.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of CSBARS. I want to start by asking that roll be called to establish a quorum.
Sure. Paul Kramer,
Present.
George Leo,
Present.
Kevin Marshall,
Present.
Jessica Park,
Present.
Karen Travis,
Present.
and Linda Keller.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will then turn to public comments. I understand that there were no written comments received. If there's anyone who is present who would like to make known that they would like to provide public comment, you can do so either by using the raise hand or *9 if anyone is calling in. Do we have anyone seeking to make public comment today?
No, we don't have any hands of members seeking to make public comment.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of April 16th. Is there a motion? Please identify yourself when you respond.
This is Dean Jessica Park. I move to approve.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion or suggested edits from the minutes? Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Dean Leal, second. Great. If there's no further discussion, then I will ask for a roll call vote.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
George Leo,
Yes.
Kevin Marshall,
Yes.
Jessica Park,
Yes.
Karen Travis,
Yes.
Linda Keller.
Yes.
With 6 yeses and 0 nos, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the chair's report. As you probably know, the CBE is meeting on Friday. I just wanted to call a few items to your attention if you haven't had a chance to look at the agenda posted on the website yet. First, under 2B, there is an item action on proposed revisions to guidelines for foreign educated general applicants with a first degree in law. So this is proposing new guidelines to delineate requirements for those with a first degree in law from another country, changing up some of the requirements for what that additional year of legal education might look at. I noticed, for example, dropping the current requirement to certain bar tested subjects other than PR. So I thought that might be an item of interest. Also under for examinations, there's an item posted for update on the 2025 California bar exam. The documents posted for this item focus on the February 2025 bar exam and the proposal to have a vendor supply the multiple choice questions. You might want to check out the documents and tune in for this one. The documents that are posted explain that Kaplan, the vendor in discussion with the bar to provide multiple choice aimed for the February 2025 bar exam, had asked the state bar to defer the discussion of that item at the last Board of Trustees meeting due to a letter that Kaplan received from NCBE raising contractual and IP concerns. Perhaps we'll have any further updates under recent developments today. If not, certainly I know it's an item of interest to many for Friday's CBE meeting. There are also a couple of items under Ed Standards I wanted to highlight. One is the discussion on 2023 Cal Accredited and Unaccredited Law School Performance Report. As you might recall, this is report that I believe started last year based on the annual report from CALS and unaccredited schools, has some expanded information from last time based on supplemental data. And then under Ed Standard C, there's an update on the review of the unaccredited law school rules, which I'm sure will be of interest to many. Looks like Cody had posted a report to the CBE with principles and goals for the unaccredited rules review, along with a list of next steps between now and August, including seeking input from various stakeholders such as CSBARS. Then there's also a special set item on the agenda for the CBE on Friday on findings from the evaluation of the productive mindset and structural intervention that promotes achievement on the California bar exam. That special set for 11 a.m. I believe this is what we more colloquially refer to as the bar exam strategies and stories program. So that should be interesting to see what those findings are. With that, we'll move on to staff reports, starting with a topic of interest to many CALs, a report on the application process for jointly accredited status for accredited law schools. Cody, I believe you will start us off on that.
Yes, thank you so much, Dean Keller. Well, this report, I think, is one that's been highly anticipated, and the report is a simple one. We are pleased to announce that the application for jointly accredited status will launch next month in July 2024. We are implementing an online form and an online file upload platform as well. The intention being that this should hopefully make submitting an application and the necessary materials as easy as possible, kind of moving away from our current PDF and email approach. And this hopefully will serve as a pilot for digitization for future applications. I think some of the notes that are important for members here and will be part of, I think, our communication around launching this. We do anticipate a number of applications being submitted at one time or near one another. So there is the possibility that processing time for these applications may be a little longer than other application processes. What we have done, I think, on our end to try to mitigate that, one, having these sorts of communications to try to set clear expectations, and we will have that a high level of communication and expectation setting throughout the process. But also, again, looking at the application process that's going to launch, we've done what we can to kind of streamline the materials and information that is requested of law schools, really focusing around the core requirements for jointly accredited status. So again, kind of the goal being that the application process is as efficient as possible, recognizing the large volume that may come through. As far as kind of the order of operations, our team will process and move schools through the process in a manner that is fair to those who submit complete applications and provide all the necessary materials promptly. We will make necessary adjustments along the way to ensure that the overall process is as efficient as possible. So again, we'll be communicating any adjustments that are needed to ensure that we can move these applications as quickly as humanly possible. But again, the expectation setting and our honest communication will be sharing with you all the application process and any, again, volume capacity issues that may arise. But we'll have, again, next month, this application ready to launch in a digital format, and we'll be communicating that with all of the relevant law schools as soon as it's ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Just for the video, it looks like there are 2 Jessica Parks now. Is that accurate? There is someone else who popped in as Jessica Park as well. Teresa, I don't know if you...
Hi there. I'm so sorry. I was just attempting to call Dean Park. I was clicking on the link. I'm a dean, but Jessica is our Uber dean. and just trying to figure out how it ended up with a panel of staff. I'm going to see if there's a way that I can exit and use a different invite to maybe come in as a different status, but I am deferring
Yes,
to Dean
that sounds
Park as
like a good
our
idea.
guru. I'm not sure how that
Sounds like a good idea. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Okay,
Uh,
on the top of our CSBARS agenda that's posted on the State Bar website, you can see an audience link. If we're not able to effectively place you in the audience, you'll be able to log off and then go ahead and log on as an audience member using the Zoom link on that agenda. And that should work. Thank you very much.
Yes, apologies for that. I am in a different time zone, so I think there's some confusion there. Okay.
Well, Dean Park, you always contribute to discussions in an appreciated manner. So having two of you might have been even more helpful, but
Thank
we
you.
straightened that out.
Thanks. So Cody, I did have a question. I understand there's going to be an application form and things to submit, and appreciate, sounds like the timing wise, it'll sort of be, first come, first served in terms of if you actually submit everything completely, then you will be processed first. Can you add anything in terms of the visits that I understand are going to be a required part of the review of these applications?
Yeah, so the process will be kind of a multi-phase step. The first is an application, and the application really is just meant to capture the necessary information about the accredited status and accreditor, just to gauge, essentially just core qualification for the program. That piece is the new piece and is relatively straightforward and simple. Everything after that, as far as the kind of the whole picture of the application process, will be steps that law school deans and law schools are familiar with. One step being the self-study requirement, and then a necessary inspection under the new accredited law school rules. So those two steps should be very familiar, with changes being made again in the era of streamlining the process and really focusing and honing in on core requirements for jointly accredited status. So like, again, the example of the self-study, that is something that you all are very familiar with, but we've made an adjustment so that it really reflects the needs of the jointly accredited status program, and should hopefully kind of reduce the burden in doing that work.
Okay, thank you. Looks like Dean Park has questions as well.
I was just curious if eventually this information is going to be hosted at the State Bar site in any way, or is it more a matter of sort of discussing with the law school regulation department in order to see an application?
Well, as far as where an application will be posted, as I mentioned, we are digitizing this application, so it will exist online. It will be hosted through a tool that the State Bar uses across multiple teams. So it won't be posted, or sorry, where it certainly will be posted will be the tool that we use. It's called FormSite. That will be the platform where the application will be hosted. Where it will be communicated elsewhere, I think, is maybe something that's still to be determined. But one of the hopes and the way we've designed this application is that all the necessary information should hopefully be able to exist in this online platform where the application is. So there's hopefully one place with the information and the application in one digital area.
No, thank you. That's helpful. The reason I ask, it's kind of similar to other things, I think, like bar stories and strategies. Just sometimes it feels more real when it's actually there's a place that it's hosted on at the State Bar site. And but of course, for this one, it's only a certain subcategory that's interested, but it can be helpful if it is hosted in a way that, multiple members can access. Thank you.
Sure.
So
Thank you for that.
The question is about public availability, I gather, Dean Park.
Yes, like for example, with Beppy, who's my closest example of doing accreditation approval by accreditation status, they will put out their forms, you know, on one page with a link. And I'm not saying that we're at that stage yet. My question is more, is this the type of thing that will go to that stage where, you know, it will kind of have its own landing page and explanation and the form? I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
And then maybe to be clear, Cody, so once applications are filed, will they be available to the public, to other schools and students via the web?
I'm thinking just the blank template, by the way, in terms of, you know, hosting it to a website, but great question. Like, yeah, what
blank-
happens to the completed applications as well? I didn't even think about that.
So the
I know
blank
sometimes-
application, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Natalie.
Oh, the blank application will be made available to all schools, regardless of category. So schools that don't currently have an institutional accreditation outside of the state bar or who are in the registered unaccredited category will also be able to have access to these applications to help them determine if they would like to start the steps to pursue jointly accredited status as well. So they'll be made available to all schools.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the blank form, but once the applications are filed, are they not public records, or have you as staff addressed any the need for segregating out information that's found to be a trade secret? How is that all going to be handled?
It should be handled consistent with the way that our current applications are. And the portions that are shared with the public will be posted on the State Bar's website as they are now with current inspection reports. And we do redact or retain as private those things that we can under the CPRA.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. If there are no other questions, we will move on. I believe our next report is the report on first year law students examination logistics. I don't know who is covering that, or if they're not here yet.
That will be Amy Nunez. She's just coming up as a panelist now.
Ah, great, thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So, I'll be providing a quick update on the first year law student exam. So the upcoming exam is going to be administered at Prometric test sites around the state on June 25th. We have a few applicants that are actually going to be sitting at Prometric test sites in other states as well. So applicants, oh, sorry, we have a PowerPoint too. Maybe I jumped the gun, Teresa, and maybe you can get it up for us. Thank you. Great.
Are you able to see it or no?
We see the menu, but not the actual PowerPoint. It was open at some point, but I think you went back to the menu.
Oh, that's weird because it's okay. 1 second, everyone. Sorry about that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so as I mentioned, the exam is going to be administered at Prometric test sites. We have about 250 applicants that are scheduled to test. A little over 70% are testing at the Prometric test centers because people who are unable to either neither live near a Prometric test site or unable to travel to one have been allowed to test remotely. So it's about 28% of our applicants will be testing remotely. As noted in our material that we've sent out and on our website, applicants are required to schedule their exam and they receive a prompt once they've been registered as to how to do that. We can go to the next screen. So, and the next, these are our counts that I mentioned 251 registered, 180 are taking it at a prometric test site, 71 are testing remotely. And earlier this year, the CBE voted to change a format of the exam by removing the essay component of the exam. And so this upcoming exam will be our first all multiple choice exam administered by the state bar. And the law content remains the same. We'll be covering contracts, torts, and criminal law. Results are scheduled to be released on August 9th, 2024. One thing I want to remind this group is that there is one remaining step that's required of us for analysis purposes as we transition to a full remote exam, and that is to conduct a standard setting study. And a standard setting study is one where we establish a cut score that will be presented to the CBE for their vote. So currently we're seeking volunteers to serve on a panel in July to review the standard setting. Again, this is specifically to establish the cut score given the format change. So if anybody is interested, please reach out to me. We seek about 10 volunteers. We have some spots already filled. We plan to meet on this on July 13th. It's a one-day event. It starts relatively early, around 8 a.m., and it is an in-person event. So, and the State Bar would cover travel expenses for this session. So again, if anybody's interested on serving on this panel that's looking at the standard setting component of this entire transition process, please reach out to me as we seek more volunteers on this. And so I'll pause here to see if anybody has any questions about the first year law student exam. Okay.
Actually, I do.
Okay.
Just a small minor one, but it was frustrating, frankly, that I didn't know. For the folks taking the exam at the Prometric site, I now know that they are able to use scratch paper and that they're provided with a piece of, like the good old days, they get a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen. Because I was lecturing my students, I just finished up our first year review and prep course, that, thinking that same very draconian restriction that applies to remotely administered exams. That is, if you look down, look away, you're going to get red flagged and potentially chapter 6 on that. The folks that had taken the practice exam said, well, no, Dean Leal, that's not correct. They told us that, in fact, they gave us paper to do. So I want to make sure that that's actually accurate. Are you aware of the distinction?
It's not a paper. So those that are taking it in person get a like a plastic card and a marker that they could use, an erasable.
Okay. Well, but the key point is that they can look away from the screen, and because I guess there are live proctors at the location, that they are not going to trigger the same AI red flag warning and be accused of cheating if they do that. So that's that. So again, little details like that ahead of time is something that I think the deans would appreciate knowing, because of the, I know there's a transitional period, but again, they look to us often, particularly for the first time takers who haven't taken the exam, what it's going to be like. So they think that we're omniscient and we know exactly what the State Bar has planned, and obviously we don't.
Well, and the other thing is that those that are taking it remotely, so this small proportion, or the 28% that are going to be taking it remotely, will have access to like a virtual scratch pad. So
that's on their screen.
That's on their screen, correct.
So they're still looking ahead. So I mean, it can, but thanks for clarifying that. So I'll
Okay. All right, no problem. Any other questions? Dean Park, hello.
Thank you. Hello. Just to follow up on that, so those at the Prometric site, it's kind of, they're given a scratch pad that they can work off screen, but then those remotely, the equivalent of that kind of experience in a way, they have sort of that feature of it being a scratch pad on the screen, right?
Yeah.
So, and then is there a reason that if there's a feature to add the virtual scratch pad on screen, that wasn't also done for the Prometric tickers? I was just kind of curious about that.
So, we've been using Prometric. This is probably our 5th exam administration that's using the Prometric system. And so we've had the same practice since we started. So I think when George mentioned the flags that happened in the past, that's when we were using ExamSoft, and it was a system that was a record and review process. When we moved into Prometric, it's a live proctoring system. So the flags are reduced there's a decline in the number of flags because you have a live proctoring that's ensuring that people don't leave the camera, that there's no paper being used, and so on. So I hope I'm answering your question. I think your question was, have we always used this as part of our Prometric test system? And the answer is yes, we have.
Okay, so that the on-screen scratch pad that's consistent across all users. That was actually what I was
Oh, yes, it
confused
is.
about. And so then the people who are in person, that board and marker, that's sort of that's an additional physical item for those people at the Prometric Center, but it's meant to be the same as that
Correct.
sketchboard on the screen.
But
Okay,
Amy,
that's helpful. I didn't realize that. Thank you.
and Amy, just to clarify and to confirm though, but for any of students taking it remotely, they are still under the same restrictive AI proctored issues. That is, if they're looking away from the screen for whatever reason, that's going to generate a red flag.
If they're looking away, I think there's somebody that's watching them. I don't know how much time, but there's no like AI generated flag, right?
This is,
as there is.
taking it home. I mean, the remotely, there's so.
It's a live person that's like observing them.
No, but
So
that's at the Prometric site. I'm talking about the people taking it purely remotely. You were saying there, my understanding is that there aren't live proctors for those taking it remotely, but is that incorrect?
there are. That's
Oh,
incorrect. So there are live proctor. That's a difference that I was mentioning between the record and review, which is what ExamSoft did and what generated a lot of flags. Prometric is live. So somebody is, there's a ratio of proctors, students to proctors. And so a proctor has a set of examinees that they're observing. So in terms of flags, it's a human that is making that determination whether a flag or a warning is warranted, and can actually address any issues as they come up in the event that there's any potential a suspicion of cheating, and so that gets addressed immediately. So
are you saying that the proctoring is identical at either the Prometric site or those taking it remotely?
yeah, with the exception that we can't offer somebody to use paper remotely for security reasons, which is why anybody taking the exam remotely is going to rely 100% on a virtual scratch paper versus somebody in person where you have people monitoring physically there, that they are offered this board that I mentioned. So that's the primary difference in the and obviously that if you're testing at a Prometric test center, you're allowed to leave and go to the restroom, unlike being at home where that's a violation of leaving the camera. And it's something that we can't accommodate remotely.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
Thank you for clarifying. I actually had another question just going back to the slides. So I saw that there was that sort of discussion, and I think you said 28% are remote. The slide before, is there any way to pull that up? Because I missed some of the information there, I think.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
What slide?
Oh,
do you-
I think it was the one before having numbers sort of break, yeah, thank you. So this was the one I saw, and then just to go back, one slide from there. Great, thank you. So the people who are testing remotely, it is definitely an extenuating circumstance exception for them.
Yes.
Okay.
And I
click
mentioned
general.
what those were. It's people who probably either have transportation issues that cannot go to a prometric test center, or who live too far from one of the test centers.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Well, with that, I will hand it over to Becky Romero, who will be talking about the upcoming bar exam. Teresa, I think she has to get promoted.
Oh, yes.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Becky Romero, and I was invited to give you an update on test center locations. So I'm happy to provide you with an update on the upcoming exam sites and offer some tips for examinees who are sitting for the upcoming bar exam. So if we can go ahead and go to that slide, please. There we go. That's it. So the general bar exam will be administered on Tuesday and Wednesday, July 30th and 31st. The attorney's exam will be administered on Tuesday, July 30th, and the exam will be held in person. We had over 10,000 examinees register, and we have most of the applicants testing using a laptop. As you can see, we have 9,015, and these numbers were the most current numbers as of yesterday, and we have 448 writers. And with the testing accommodation applicants, those numbers are still pending because as they're being approved, partially approved, or pending, those numbers continue to fluctuate. Next slide, please. So applicants should expect larger test sites with a high number of applicants. We are recommending that applicants arrive early to ensure enough time for parking and to settle into the testing space. So we are also recommending for them to look for signage to navigate to their specific testing space, because this time around we will be using multiple spaces at the same location. So we do have 16 test centers. 4 of them are combined test centers that are composed of applicants using a laptop or writing the exam. We have 4 that are only being used by laptop applicants, and we have 8 testing accommodation centers. So with that being said, we have taken your feedback into consideration. If we've added additional sites for this exam period, and this time around, we've included a standard site in Sacramento as well, both the standard and non-standard site in San Diego. So with that being said, the new test center site is Golden Gate University School of Law, which is a testing accommodation site in San Francisco. We also have the University of San Diego Warren Hall, which is a TA site in San Diego. We also have the Chula Vista Elite Athlete Training Center, which is a laptop location in San Diego, and the Grounds, which is a laptop and writing site in Sacramento. Next slide, please. So in regards to the environment, efforts are being made to maintain a comfortable and quiet test center. Some events, conditions, or actions of third parties may be beyond our control. In regards to temperature fluctuations, the test center temperature may vary due to weather or cooling or heating equipment. So we always recommend for examinees to maybe layer up, and that way they can just remove a piece of clothing as it gets warmer, or add a little extra if it gets too cold. So we do recommend that applicants are prepared for either warm or cold temperatures. In regards to noise consideration, we recommend earplugs. And that's just to prepare for any potential noise, either from other applicants, perhaps applicants that are using the restroom. And if we don't have carpeting in the floor, it's easy for them to push a chair and cause some noise that may be distracting, or proctors that are just performing their duties while they're walking up and down the aisles, taking attendance, looking at IDs, or equipment inside or outside of the test center. So in regards to earplugs, we do recommend that applicants use the earplugs perhaps that a swimmer would use. They can't be connected in any way. Next slide, please. And we also recommend for applicants to bring a non-perishable lunch. And this is just to avoid the inconvenience of having to drive a distance to purchase lunch, to ensure that there's enough time for a meal during the limited lunch break that we provide for the applicants. And we also recommend it to allow adequate time for parking. If you have applicants that are driving to the test center, we do ask for them to plan to arrive early to find and pay for parking. And in most locations, we have several parking lots and garages that are close to the exam site. That's why we do recommend for everyone that is sitting during the exam to report on Monday between the hours of 2 and 4, just to make sure that they're aware of where it is that they're going to report on exam day and avoid that additional stress. We also recommend they allocate extra time for security checks. And some locations, such as the LA office, they do have to go through security checks. So they must build in additional time to go through security before reaching their exam check-in location. And this will just help ensure a smooth and timely entry process. And like I said, just relieve some of that unnecessary stress. So these are just the update on locations and some tips that might be useful for anyone that's sitting for the exam. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Remind me of the dates again.
And the dates of the exam, it is Tuesday and Wednesday, July the 30th and 31st. If you have those applicants that are attorneys and only taking that part of the exam, which is not the MBE, that would be July 30th.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Natalie, do you have a question?
I do. So two things. One, just to confirm that the reason why there is additional security at the State Bar office is merely because that's also the location where we have the State Bar court. So it's the standard security that's always there. Yes.
That is correct.
And then second, could you take a moment to talk about hoodies versus sweaters and any recommendation or advice that could be helpful?
Yes, of course. So hoodies are allowed, but there is a disclaimer. Applicants are not allowed to place that hoodie over the head. And the reason is because when proctors are walking down and up and down the aisles, they want to make sure that they're able to see the applicant's eyes. So that is one of the reasons. So if they wear a sweatshirt with a hoodie, that's fine. They just can't use the actual head covering.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yes, I had a question.
Yes, hi.
Is anything that you just went over in those slides not also on the website for test takers?
All of the information that I have disclosed is on the website, and we also have an FAQ that we do recommend for applicants to go through. And pretty soon we're going to start sending weekly email blasts to all the applicants just to let them know of anything that might come up, any changes in regards to anything that we find that may be useful for them. So you can be expecting those very soon.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes,
Thank
hi.
you so much. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Thank you so much. My question was actually very similar. I just had a follow-up question.
Okay.
If some of this is sounding new to an applicant, for example, there's students who may wear head coverings for certain reasons.
Mhm.
And they want to be able to talk to someone at the state bar just about the guidance that they're receiving from the site or FAQ. What would be a good recommendation for how to guide them?
Okay, well, first I do want to say that head coverings due to religious beliefs are allowed. And you may recall that in the past, we used to require for them to petition. That is no longer the case. So if an applicant arrives with a head covering for religious purposes, that is fine. But anything else, if they encounter any problems, my recommendation is always to seek the help of the staff member in charge or a staff representative, which are always assigned to each test center.
Oh, great. And I was thinking even before the test or before the test administration, if a student wanted to reach out, would they know about who's assigned to each test center? Or is there maybe a more general way they would reach out?
Well, we always have a staff table and it has this big blue cloth that says State Bar, and that's normally where you have State Bar personnel sitting. We ask that everyone who is a State Bar employee wear a badge, and it'll contain their name, the little emblem of the State Bar, and it also say what position there is. So if they can just go to that table, they can see if it's a staff representative or a staff member in charge, and they'd be more than happy to answer any questions that they have that they would need, or if any type of assistance that they would need.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But also, Dean Park, in the event that people have questions today, like before even they get to the exam site, you could submit those as a general request in the AIM system, and we can address those as soon as they come in. Also, one thing to note, you mentioned applicants that perhaps have not, it's their first time sitting for the exam. A lot of this information about what's allowed in the exam and what is not allowed has either been shared through our FAQ on our website and will also be included in the admissions ticket bulletin, which is scheduled to be available July 2nd. So a lot of this information that is, it will be in there, and it's one area or document that we highly recommend people become familiar with, especially first-time takers, as to what you can bring to the exam and what you shouldn't.
Thank you for covering that. That definitely was why I was asking questions, just to make sure it's very consistent and consistently published. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are any other questions that I can help you with, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Right, up next, I think Natalie is going to give us some information on the Lawyers Assistance Program Retaker Support Group.
Thanks, Dean Keller. Yes, so we have a new program offered through the Lawyer Assistance Program here at the State Bar. And we've talked about this just a bit before, but we've just concluded it for the first time. And we want to make sure that you can help us amplify the message that the Lawyer Assistance Program has a broad scope, broader than some students realize. So for example, it includes career counseling. It includes counseling related to stress management for up to 2 appointments at no charge. And starting this time for the July 2024 bar exam, it offered a bar retaker support group. And that support group had a wide range of components. It was a 4-session live webinar program that talked about a number of things, maintaining a positive mindset, strategies for the exam itself, and then a further mindset session as the exam approached that actually was conducted this past Monday. It's the first time we're trying something like that. We included not only counselors from the LAP program, but also individuals working in bar preparation currently outside of the State Bar in order to have very current information for everyone. Every person who was repeating that was signed up for the July 2024 exam was invited to participate. Quite a few did register. And we're evaluating how many who registered did come through and attend the full program, and also what they thought about it as well. We'll be evaluating it to determine whether or not this is something we can continue to offer. The good news about this is that, like the BAR Strategies and Stories program, it was offered free to applicants, and it is complementary to that program. So we would encourage repeaters to sign up for the BAR Strategies and Stories program, which can be completed in about 2 hours. And then also this 4-session program. We hope by sharing it now, we'll keep it top of mind for you. And as we determine whether we can repeat it and can share the dates with you, we hope you'll place those on your school calendars, and that you'll also incorporate them into your own bar prep programs. So that's what I have to share with you. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. And if I can answer them, I will. And otherwise, I'll ferry them to Ken Norse, our subject matter expert from LAP, who's coordinating this program. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Teresa, I believe you have a reminder about CSBARS membership.
Yes, thanks, Dean Keller. So I just wanted to remind everyone in this group and anyone listening in who might be interested that we are accepting applications to CSBARS through June 30th of this year, and you can find more information about CSBARS and the application on the State Bar website. And CSBARS actually has its own community page, so that's, if you navigate to the CSBARS community page, that's where you'll find the application and more information. We do have 3 seats that will be opening up, 2 for unaccredited law school deans and 1 for an accredited law school dean. Those appointments will be made probably in late August, somewhere around there, by the chair of the CBE and the vice chair of the CBE. So those anyone who is applying, their kind of first meeting for CSBARS would be in the October 2024. So this group will be meeting until August 2024, and then we'll have those 3 seats will be filled for the October 2024 meeting. Is there any questions on the application process or anything else? All right, well, thank you so much, Dean Keller.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anything for our recent developments today?
I don't believe we do. We had on our list to talk about some of the elements that you've highlighted coming up at the CBE meeting taking place on Friday. And also just reminding people that in August, the CBE will be meeting live, and that will take place in our Los Angeles office.
Okay, great. Thank you for that reminder. Then that brings us to our discussion regarding best practices for communication strategies related to state bar updates. So Cody, I will turn it over to you to tee that up for us.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, I've got a short slide deck that I'm hoping can guide us through a discussion, but my intention today was to share some practices of the State Bar and then open the floor for input, feedback, and again, discussion with you all about best practices related to communicating updates, both with students, but also with law school leadership and admin. As you all know, and we've talked a little bit about it today, there are possibly big changes on the horizon, and that means there are important updates that the State Bar will need to share with stakeholders when the time comes. And so it is an important time, we feel, to kind of reflect on our communication practices and perhaps adopt some new approaches or some best practices from our partners in this work. So let me get this slide deck up. And like I said, my intention was just to share some more current practices and thinking around this discussion, and then open the floor here. Okay. Well, so let me walk through a few goals and current practices that we feel help achieve those goals. So as I mentioned, one of our, I think, most important tasks is to ensure that applicants themselves are aware of important updates, whether it be the future of the bar exam, or even some of the important updates that Becky shared regarding the July administration. Our current practice typically involves contacting our registered applicants. And that works well when it comes to those who are registered because they're about to or are going to sit for the bar exam. But there are a lot of applicants, particularly those earlier in their journey, who aren't registered with us. And that poses kind of an important gap. Um, Law schools, you all have been kind of our valuable trusted messengers in reaching those individuals who may not already be registered with the state bar. And again, that we appreciate that, and that's why we are having today's discussion. Similarly, we tend to send communications to relevant administrators and faculty. And again, we rely on these kind of lists that we have in our databases. Currently our practice would tend to be to contact the law school deans, who then may distribute information to their various staff in particular issue areas. We have found, that is effective, but we have heard from some faculty that they may miss out on information. We've heard from some deans that they can sometimes find it burdensome to have to kind of distribute that information. So again, that is like another gap that I think we've identified. And so I think the first question I want to pose to this group, are there cohorts, whether it be different communities of students, different communities of employees at law schools themselves, or maybe it's just community organizations broadly that are entwined with your law school's community? Are there these other groups that we should be sharing updates with to expand our reach and again, to fill in those gaps where we're currently not reaching as many individuals as we could? So I'll stop on this slide there and just open the floor if folks have any input or feedback about groups that we are maybe missing right now. Would love to hear about that. I saw, I think, Dean Park and also Dean Keller, I think both your hands went up around the same time.
I'm happy to defer to Dean Keller. I mean, please go ahead. I was just thinking of one group. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'll be quick. So this may be something that's on a future slide, but yeah, I'm guessing that most of this, when we're talking about contacting the registered applicants or law school deans, we're talking about sending out emails. And I think a good piece of our discussion should be thinking about what other ways of communication there are, because I know whether it's the law school deans, admin faculty, or students or actual bar takers, everyone feels just inundated by emails. And
Yeah. Dean Keller, that will be the next slide, and I think I'll tease it a little bit. You're right, a lot of our communication is by email. We looked at, and I'll share some more details, but we've looked at some of our data before, and the email campaigns are actually pretty highly successful compared to other email campaigns out there, and so that works well. And so we're kind of now having to address the edges of where there's maybe room for improvement. So that will be, I think, the next slide, and we can dive into that.
What I wanted to mention was just at some sites, the law school dean can be very much the main point of contact, especially for compliance, especially for really important regulatory events at their school. And I think my staff, they've been comfortable with me sending all kinds of information about, for example, the repeater support groups, kind of going out of sort of the necessary compliance route. But then they definitely ask me, oh, where else can I get, where else is a channel for that information? So I think there's definitely a perception, whether it has to be, you know, something to react to or not. It's easy to expect the law school dean, I think, to be the main regulatory point of contact for the law school, but not always for all the other topics, I think. So,
Well, thank you for sharing that. We actually had a similar conversation with law school counsel last week. Again, just trying to capture a wide net of information here. And I think one of the interesting opportunities that came up there, I think is related to this, Dean Park, is you know, I think the state bar has various opportunities on the website to sign up for newsletters in specific areas that are of interest to certain members of your team. So I think one good example is, you know, if you have someone whose responsibility is like access and inclusion work, there is a newsletter sign up just for the Council on Fairness and Access and Fairness. And that staff member may not be aware that they can sign up for that specific newsletter and really get information tailored from us that is tailored to someone who works in that area. So I think that's an opportunity, both, you know, you may want to communicate that, but also for us to try to think about how to distribute these opportunities, these newsletter opportunities, or at least spotlight them in a different way so folks know how to raise their hand and get the information that they need.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well, whether at this point I'm the only one who gets all the emails on these topics, whether I can designate someone else also who would receive them. And for example, we have a faculty person who's now in charge of bar prep, whether they could be designated, or a student representative could be designated. I didn't know that there was a newsletter that could be signed up for, and something like this I think would help us a lot.
So Cody, can I jump in here?
Of course.
Okay, so a couple of things. Thanks for that feedback, Dean Travis. So regarding the newsletter, this is something that's automatically sent to all deans and registrars. And if you have another person from your school that would like to sign up, then they can do so, and there's a subscribe button on there. Or you're also welcome to send that person's name, their title, and their email to us at lawschoolregulation@calbar.ca.gov, the email that you normally use. The challenge for us is that in our system, we maintain and we require you to help us maintain the dean and the registrar so we can guarantee it'll go to those lists. If you add another person, then your school will be responsible for giving an update when roles change, which is not a problem for us. We're happy to receive that, but it's important for folks to remember to do that. The other tip I would say is that sometimes schools create a certain email that can be shared at the school for this purpose. And it's important to know that you have someone checking that email as well. This email is an administrator email rather than a student. And quite often we've actually sent things separately to the students, and we're forwarding to you what the students have already seen to Dean Park's point. So you can not only know the information, but you can see the way that it was shared with students.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Natalie, that's an important distinction. Thank you for saying that. There is the law school regulation email and the newsletter that provides what I guess I would say is like official information from our team. And then there are the various like lists that are available throughout the State Bar's website, connected to various other programs and teams. And so thank you for clarifying that, Natalie. Our work with the law school regulations team has those limitations that Natalie mentioned regarding who should be the main point of contact and receive that kind of official information. And then there are these other opportunities that we can maybe try to spotlight or connect staff with. Okay, well, Dean Keller, you got it ahead of me, but I think the next piece of this was how to use the most effective channels of communication or identify new channels of communication. We have done a lot of work recently to kind of reflect on the data that we collect either from our current email communications or from our surveying of applicants. So for example, we have our post-bar and post first year law student exam surveys. And one of the important pieces of data that we gather there is what source of information applicants rely on the most. And we found that the State Bar's website and email communications are the top two sources of information. The good news is when we look at our email communications, our open and click-through rates, which are kind of standard measurements of an email success, are actually very high in comparison to kind of industry standards. So we know when the State Bar contacts applicants, for the most part, we have a pretty good success rate in getting applicants to open that email, particularly when it relates to the bar exam and the closer we get to exam time. You know, again, Becky mentioned our countdown email that's up and coming. That countdown email is highly successful. But we also found that 1 in 4 of those people who took our post-exam survey in February after the February exam told us that they rely on various social media platforms. And then there was another field in which folks kind of identified their preference. So I think what this affirmed is our kind of standard communication practices, which are highly used, like email communications. They work, but there is a subset or a cohort of individuals that we cannot reach through email, and we need to identify these different channels, whether it be social media or something else. And so, yeah, I will leave it there. I wanted to open the floor if there's other ways that you're trying to share information, whether it's, you know, I know there's some folks adopting SMS text message, blog posts, whatever it might be. I'm curious to know what's working for you all and your students and what's capturing their attention. Great, Dean Keller.
Yeah, I was going to mention one thing that we have moved to, rather than sending lots of information in email, which even if they open it, they don't necessarily read the entire thing, is to have, you know, essentially on our LMS where we have not just class information, but we have sections for different student services, and that can be a repository of all of the different pieces of information that they might be looking for. So I don't recall offhand how the State Bar website is configured in terms of, you know, applicants closer to the bar exam, that how it's sort of divided. But I think it might be helpful to consider some place where, in particular, bar studiers, bar takers can find information, not just like on the FAQs about the test taking, but also, you know, some central repository of updates for all of the different things, particularly at this time, that are under consideration, right? There's not just the February or later bar next year of, you know, the multiple choice vendor, the change in modality, potential changes to the California bar exam, which is not the same thing as the next gen bar exam, but a lot of people don't really understand that. The potential alternative pathway, all of the things that are, you know, pending currently with the Supreme Court. I think having one central place where people who are, you know, only semi-tuned in could go to try to figure out, like, what are the things that are pending relating to the bar exam could be very helpful. And I understand a lot of those things would just be, this issue is pending before the Supreme Court. But even having something that just, you know, acknowledges, yes, this is out there, this is the current status, check back here for further updates, could be particularly helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know you and I too had a moment to talk about this previously, and I shared, you know, we're trying to find that fine line where we can communicate these important updates, even if they're still pending, as much as possible without also creating confusion. Because these, you know, particularly like the future of the bar exam, it's a very important issue, and we want folks to feel confident that they understand what their exam experience is going to look like, even if we are currently exploring changes. So there's a balance there, but noted, and I think that that's good feedback. I saw Dean Park and Dean Leal, so I'm not sure who had their hands up first.
I'll go quickly.
Okay.
I think just 2 points I have for this. So at ALU and our learning management system, and I'm not saying this is the most successful practice, it's something we have defaulted to in a way. We have an ALU Center for CBX Studies, and we found that to be a helpful site beyond the student center, beyond other places that students go for information to be compiled a certain way. And so it's similar to the State Bar site in a way, in the sense of there's some user design spaces. If you're curious about the baby bar, you go here. If you're curious about the CBX, you go there. If you're curious about other admissions requirements, you know, you go to those sections, but it is all in one page, and each thing is sort of to its own module. And that just made me think about, again, this is not the most successful practice, but just the accessibility of someone being able to have that repository of information. I think that was mentioned before, and that it is at one level, but maybe there's different modules that you can go into. I think how the website at the State Bar it's designed now, given how complex some of the information is, you know, I think I appreciate that there's menu items for each thing. I appreciate it that I, as a law school dean, I can direct people to that. But I have found sometimes if people get too lost or they get too overwhelmed, having some sort of secondary directional guidance is very helpful. And it can be something even the State Bar chooses to do, maybe some kind of navigation guidance, very oriented around certain user subcategories that you know are the type of people that are coming to your website with a specific purpose. That's one point. My second point, sorry, it was a little bit longer than I anticipated. My second point was just the use of text. We have found that is getting more and more popular, but it does have to be used in a certain way. So either it's an emergency, like time-sensitive emergency announcement, or it's there's something else to refer to, and there can be sort of a friendly, engaging, not too frequent text associated with it. And so we found that that doesn't sacrifice the need for detail or the need for someone to go look at some resources on their own, but sometimes just for the engagement level. People will take a look at text. They will especially take a look at text that's saying, hey, this is a short text, but here's a link to what could be helpful and what you might be interested in investigating further.
Great, thank you for that. And Dean Leal?
Yes, thanks. My comment and suggestion dovetails, I think, perfectly with what Dean Park just mentioned. The conversation we just had with Amy today, I think, is illustrative of the fact that here, the two of us are deans of registered schools, and we were very, very ill-informed with regard to this, fairly somewhat small, but seriously an important issue with regard to who's going to have the ability to have a scratch pad, who isn't. And I'm giving, bad advice based upon, practices that are no longer in effect because, and I'll apologize if this was somewhere in one of the newsletters, I didn't see it, but I never saw anything in an email or anything, communication from the bar regarding this change in the way, the distinction in the proctoring between remotely, applicants taking the first year exam remotely versus at the other site. So my suggestion would be 4 to 6 weeks before either the first year exam and certainly the bar exam to send the deans an email with links to the State Bar's website, which honestly isn't the easiest to navigate. I think we'd all agree on that point. So that we could just do what I would do, every time. I would just forward that to, I know who among my students are taking the exams, and I would just forward that email with and highlight it, updates or, regard to the upcoming CBX. And I think if we had those links, I would take a look at them, and I know my students and graduates would take a look at them. So I think that would be a proactive way for the State Bar to keep deans up to date, because as I mentioned earlier, our students, I think, come to us regularly, because they they think we know, and they're going to take our word for it. So the better informed we are, then the better able we are to advise our students accurately, as I didn't do just recently with regard to what you do with a scratch pad. So I hope you'd take that into advisement and perhaps adopt it.
Certainly, and I think it's a comment that comes in good timing. We, as Becky mentioned, our countdown email for the bar exam will be sent out for the first time on Friday, the 21st. We are starting this earlier than ever, so I think we're going to have in total 6 weeks of emails. And to your point, Dean Leal, to a certain extent, we are not only providing, I think, the important deadlines and that sort of kind of core information, but we are trying to spotlight some of those changes, some of like the nuanced small changes that could create anxiety for applicants. Even clarifying the recently revised policy around water bottles, things like that. So we will be certainly sharing those countdown emails directly with the applicants and also forwarding that to deans. So please do forward that, and those emails, they do link back to the State Bar website. So to whatever extent navigating the site can feel a little dense, hopefully that gets folks directly to the information they're looking for. And I mentioned that this countdown email is really successful from an email kind of analytics standpoint. So maybe it's something we can consider adopting either for the first year exam or just in a different approach for other State Bar updates.
I did just want to say the countdown emails have been great ever since those started. And I actually take a different approach from Dean Leal, though I think some students would love his approach. I don't say things about what I think it is. I mean, it's been changed so much. So often our counseling, although I'm sure our students want more, it's actually telling them you need to take a look at the developed guidance for each exam. Like whether you're repeating, whether you're starting just now, don't make assumptions. And that is a lot on them. I think especially if they were used to relying more on, hearing about it from each other. But that's part of why we have the ALU Center for CBX Studies. It's not the most proactive thing. I love the idea of being more hands-on, but it is mirroring in many ways. These are the pieces of information. These are the links we know have been developed specifically for this exam. And so it's important for you to pay attention to those. It's important for you to not carry over other impressions or, but that being said, there's times when students look at those and have questions for us. And we're kind of surprised too with them, because we go through it in detail, but I think to go through it thinking you're the student who's going to take the exam, it's a different rightfully sensitivity. So
certainly, and happy to gather feedback in real time as some of these questions are coming through. I mentioned like this clarification about the water bottle revision of the rules allowing folks to bring water to the bar exam, and I think we maybe underestimated how many questions could even come out of just that small revision. Is this appropriate? How about this sort of bottle or this kind of label on it? All those things matter because it creates some anxiety for students. We want to be as clear as possible. But even that took a little bit of time for us to kind of assess again, kind of the real-time feedback we would get or the questions that would arise from that. So we're making adjustments along the way. And so yeah, if there are questions about the information that we're even updating, I'm happy to consider making it more clear as well. Well, we might have touched on all of this then, but I guess the last just open floor was just additional feedback. Are you hearing, are you receiving input from students or folks on your team about our communications? Happy to hear it and think about what their perspectives are. I think you all have shared some best practices, so thank you. And so, yeah, I just want to open the floor one last time if there's any additional feedback from yourself or that you're kind of transferring from your stakeholders and community. I'm happy to capture that.
I've spoken a lot, so I want to let others speak, but if others have nothing, I will say something then. Just to go forward, I think the countdown campaign, email campaigns were so helpful. I hear that from students, admin, or my academic support faculty. And I think it's because, especially with the Ames portal and different things, although I know there can be ways for administrator to see in there, I think getting the chance to see the user experience is just always helpful. And especially when we're able to talk to the student or mirror to the student, this is something you've received, this is something you should understand this way. And also implied, we're here also to talk about this with you. You're not with this information in isolation. I think that was extremely helpful and powerful, especially with something as crucial and time sensitive as bar exams. For other tools, I think it's going to really depend on the purpose and context of the communication, but definitely for bar exams, having the countdown reminders and a way to mirror that in multiple ways within the community has been extremely helpful.
Great. And as you were saying that, Dean Park, I hadn't really thought of this until this moment, but it's interesting how the countdown kind of ensures that we're all talking about the same topics and addressing the same questions kind of at the same time or at the right time, right? If a deadline's approaching. So as opposed to kind of fielding just a random set of questions, I hopefully it's helping us kind of hone in on the right questions at the right time. And we're kind of a catalyst for those discussions through that countdown email.
I think so, especially when there's deadlines.
Yeah.
People start thinking, do I actually understand the step I'm supposed to do by that deadline? And
yeah,
sometimes that doesn't come for them earlier. So.
Great. Well, we really appreciate all the feedback. As I mentioned, we recognize there are perhaps big changes on the horizon and at the very least important updates to share about some of these proposals. So this felt like the right time to engage our partners in understanding how to best make some adjustments or improve our processes. So really appreciate the candid feedback.
Great, thank you for the opportunity. We have no closed session for today, so with that, we will adjourn. See you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.